Jackie opened her lips and the whole set became quiet. It wasn't the usual back-and-forth shade or one of her usual ridiculous storylines. The others weren't like this. There was weight in her voice. As if she were about to utter something that no one was ready to hear, she glanced at Chantel and Evelyn. Fans who saw the live footage stated they could feel the tension in the air before the words were said. Timelines were flooded with whispers within minutes, and the room was the first to hear them. Jackie said that Evelyn and the same guy had dated Chantel, and a man who had a close relationship with the inner circle, not just any man, on camera. Witnesses said that the two froze in their chairs, their faces showing a combination of anger, surprise, and something no one could quite figure out. The cameras caught every look, every flutter. By the time the producers tried to defuse the situation, the crowd had already pulled out their phones and was recording every comment they could. The disclosure did more than just set off a series of chaotic events. The response of side talks, denials, and accusations will be unavoidable. Whatever it is, this shared secret has the power to ruin more than just friendships. Jackie's words weren't only said. They plummeted with a bang, like a weight no one was ready to bear. The silence was broken first by gasps from the crowd, followed by a chorus of whispers that became louder by the second. Evelyn blinked once more, her body motionless in the chair, her hands stopped in mid-gesture. Chantel opened her lips to say something, but nothing came out. The camera lights seemed harsher now, catching every facial shift and movement. With the poise that only comes after throwing a bombshell that no one else saw coming, Jackie leaned back in her chair. She didn't shout. She spoke the same thing more than once. She just let the words hang like smoke in the room. The actors was still, but there was the faint sound of a producer's voice in the distance trying to indicate a halt. The rest of the table seemed caught between interest and horror. Not everyone looked up. People glanced from Chantel to Evelyn as if we waited for one of them to explode up or reject it. Evelyn eventually broke the stillness. Her voice was low and steady, the voice you use while you're attempting to control your anger. "You're lying, Jackie. I don't know what you're talking about." Jackie's eyebrows shot up slightly, almost in laughter. "Yes, I understand exactly what I'm talking about. You two are also aware. I have no doubt about that." Chantel turned her head suddenly to Jackie, and her words relieved the tension. "Please don't include me in the story you're trying to write. I don't have time for your made-up drama." Jackie's lips curled into a little smile. "It's funny because the story isn't made. I didn't have to look for it. Not just once, either, did others who had witnessed things come to me." As she emphasized the last word, the crowd leaned in closer. As seen on video, Evelyn's gaze darted to Chantel. A fleeting glance that web aficionados would later slow down and scrutinize frame by frame. Chantel caught it too. "What does that look mean?" As she asked, her voice lifted a little. Evelyn was slow to answer. All Jackie needed to do was wait for that break before continuing. "It shows that she knows this has nothing to do with its truthfulness. It concerns how much is already well known." The studio audience responded audibly with a combination of delight and astonishment. Knowing that this would be the sensational footage that everyone would be talking about once it went online, several of the workers moved nervously. Evelyn exhaled deeply, then leaned forward to look directly at Jackie. Jackie gave an indifferent shrug. Even for someone who has dedicated their career to manipulating situations to get attention, this is low. With her arms crossed, Chantel added, "Call it low if you want, but you can't call it a lie." Her tone was severe, but her face showed a little trace of pain. "So who is this secret lover you're talking about?" "Because you definitely need more than a few vague hints." Jackie tilted her head, as if enjoying the moment. "If you're going to drag my name through the mud." Evelyn's eyes narrowed as her fingers lightly tapped the table. "If you're so sure, then say it." "Go ahead. You won't because you know you're playing with fire." Jackie leaned in and said in a quiet voice, "Yes, I do have a name. You simply aren't prepared for me to say it aloud in my opinion, but you know who it is." "You two do." The crowd erupted into a roar at that point, almost drowning out the microphones, voice that everyone could hear. "The only reason I didn't say anything is that I'm giving you both a chance to be honest before I do, but it's okay if you keep acting like you're not. Keep in mind that you're not the only one who knows." She leaned back again, her calmness a sharp contrast to the increasing animosity between Evelyn and Connell. As the voice hardened, Connell single quotes, "I have nothing to be truthful about. You may thus keep whatever story you think you have." But as she was speaking, Her foot tapped under the table, making a faint, nervous movement that Evelyn observed as well. And before she could say anything more, her lips clenched. This is also true. This nonsense will not be respected by me. Two of them are at fault. The remark landed, and both women tensed slightly, but it was unclear if it was intended to provoke. The focus was completely diverted from whatever the segment's initial topic had been by the magnetic tension at the table. The show was no longer the main focus. Instead, it concerned the potential for two women who had established their reputations on strength, control, and independence to get caught up in the same scandal. The worst thing for them was that Jackie wasn't giving up. She didn't have to argue or yell. She just let the weight of her assertion push the job to the side. When a producer made a desperate gesture to switch to a commercial, the director shook their head. That kind of spontaneous, unplanned moment is what makes television so great, and every breath, eye contact, and change in posture was captured by the camera, which stayed focused on the subject. Evelyn looked at Chantel again, and this time, Chantel looked back at her. Their faces spoke louder than words ever could. Jackie then leaned forward again, resting her elbows on the table, and her voice, barely more than a whisper, managed to draw the attention of everyone in the room. The fact that neither of you was aware of the other until now is the funniest part, she continued softly, like a lightning strike that no one could avoid. The audience's reaction to Jackie's final statement was immediate and electrifying. Evelyn's eyes narrowed into a scowl that might have broken glass after briefly widening, while the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was as if everyone in the room was aware that they were on the verge of something that couldn't be undone. Jackie leaned back in her chair, her poise almost haughty, as if she had practiced this very moment. "You see," she said, "I'm not trying to stir up rumors or anything." She stopped, letting her words settle like dust after an explosion. This is about two women who have been living in the same lie without even realizing it. Evelyn's voice cracked the tension like a whip. "And now you both have to deal with the truth. The truth, Jackie." However, the slight tremble beneath her tone was not completely hidden, and it was immediately apparent to the crowd. Again, whispers swirled, murmurs that sounded more like conjecture than denial. Finally, Chantel spoke in a calm yet purposeful tone. "Say his name if you have such faith in this tale. The only truth here is that you will say anything to stay relevant. You have been after influence since the day you arrived, and this is just another of your pathetic games. Let's see whether you're ready to go forward. Yes, I will say his name, but I think you already know it. The last thing you want is to hear it out loud." Evelyn struck the table with her hand, and her sneer reappeared as her eyes glinted. The abrupt noise stunned everyone, and they all spat it out and quit gambling. The crowd clapped and sang, and some of them even shouted, "Say it!" And others, "Avoid doing that." Every wide-eyed response was captured by Kay and the cameras. Jackie looked at the crowd as though she was also assessing the weather. "Give them the reward they begged for. Are you serious?" With a playful tone, she asked. "Tioni?" she inquired. The audience screamed back, and then she gazed back at Evelyn and Chantel with painful slowness. "Lying, Jackie funny, because he told me himself," he repeated. Of course, he didn't say it directly, but he didn't have to. It was evident in the way he spoke about each of you and how his tale changed as he relaxed. Evelyn raised her voice and shook her head. "I have a history with Marcus. He's not my guy, however, and anything you believe to be true is incorrect. Past events? You can rely on it." With a short, bitter chuckle, Chantel remarked, "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been a lot more recent than history." This sparked further whispering, and someone in the crowd commented, "So it's true." "See, the issue isn't that you've both been with Marcus," Jackie said, crossing her arms and clearly feeling good about herself. "There is an issue. Did you both have no idea that you were with him at the same time?" The way Evelyn avoided looking directly at Chantel told a different story, and Chantel noticed it too. "You can't even look at me," she said in a cutting tone, "because you know I'm right." Evelyn's voice was now cold, each word measured. "You think you've uncovered some deep, dark secret, but all you've done is embarrass yourself." The tension escalated so quickly that even the crew couldn't decide whether to intervene or let it burn. No one believes you. "She is right. You know that." Jackie laughed deeply and contentedly. "You two can't ignore what I just said, no matter how much you try to blame me. And when you get home tonight, you'll be thinking about it, wondering how much of what you think is true was actually false." The audience began shouting out their own observations of Evelyn. Most of them were just hungry for more, while others were with Chantel. The producers were afraid to interrupt because they knew they had television gold. Jackie sat there like the puppet master pulling at each string dot. It felt like it might shatter the table between Evelyn and Chantel, but then, as if on cue, someone got up from the other side of the room. "I've seen him with both of them." The woman made a loud announcement, and everyone in the room gasped again. The camera zoomed in on her as the noise echoed around the room. Evelyn's head whipped around, and her voice was sharp. "Who are you?" She smiled. Someone with enough life experience to see when a man is playing two sides. Chantel's eyes grew tense. "And you only choose to talk now?" She shrugged. "Until now, I didn't think it was my place." As the audience stood up and shouted, the crew rushed to get every angle, and the energy jumped even higher as the realization hit the room like a second wave. Now, as the accusations grew stronger, Evelyn and Chantel looked at each other, their previous barriers starting to crumble. Jackie, on the other hand, sat there, watching everything happen with the smallest smile on her lips, as though she knew that this was just the beginning. Where there had been angry but controlled words before, the atmosphere in the studio completely changed. The energy had become electric, dense, and erratic. The woman who had just finished speaking got up from her chair. She got up completely. "I've seen them both," she said, with a certain certainty in her expression that gossip seldom has. And the crowd leaned forward to see her as she came forward with intentional assurance until she was close enough to the table. On the same day, they were both with the same guy. Didn't just hang there. She raised her hand slightly, as if swearing an invisible oath, like a stone dropped into quiet water. They fell heavily. First, from somewhere in the audience, there came the sound of a quick breath. Then there were sporadic gasps, and then the room was filled with a low, rumbling hum. Her hair flung over her shoulder as Chantel's head jerked towards her. "What did you just say?" The woman did not flinch. "You heard me. Same day, same man? Both of you." Evelyn's expression softened momentarily before hardening again, her eyes narrowing as if she was searching her mind for a safe answer, the muscles in her jaw so tense that they could move beneath her skin. Some audience members tried to secretly take pictures of her face, but Jackie responded more slowly and thoughtfully, first with a glimmer of brightness in her eyes, then smirking and leaning back in her chair, folding her arms. She didn't care. Hiding, she savored the words as they flowed. "You see, I'm not the only one who says that. It has now been verified by another person who has no motive to lie." She looked from Evelyn to Chantel, like a predator who knows that both of them have already been captured. Hell got up and pushed her chair back firmly. The sound of the wood scraping against the studio floor attracted even more attention. "And I'm not just talking about between us," she added, her hands twitched in rage rather than fear. "Marcus is the source of this. Staring us in the eyes and pretending nothing was amiss, he has been lying to us both, and he thought we would never learn." Evelyn's palm was pushed hard against the table, revealing the tendons in her fingers. She wobbled a little, but her voice was solid. "And you think I'm happy about this? You think I knew? I'm his victim too, Chantel. Don't make yourself the only one here who's been wronged. We both have." The audience's reaction was immediate. Some agreed and admitted that both ladies had been played. Evelyn didn't seem outraged in her comments. Some whispered. They sounded like an unspoken admission. Chantel's forehead lifted. A little cynical smile appeared on her lips. "Then you're admitting it? You're admitting there's something out there?" Evelyn hit back right away. "I admit that we were both duped by him. Don't use what I said as your own catchphrase." Jackie's chuckle was low, cold, and fleeting. "Take a look at it. Whoa. Two women could not stand each other for years, suddenly realizing that they had been fighting the wrong person." As someone in the audience shouted, "Bring Marcus out, Kay," there was a mixture of cheers and boos. The conflict between those who wanted the drama to go on and those who want a settlement, but it had devolved into a conflict. Chanel single quotes, "Yes, I will visit him. I promise I will," as the voice rises above the din. "But that doesn't change the fact that you were seeing him when he was with me," she says, pointing sharply at Evelyn, who leaned forward and looked directly at Chantel. "And when he was with me, you were seeing him," she says. "In this case, don't pretend like you're better than me. We have both been tricked. There are others besides you two." The previous speaker, clearly enjoying her newfound power, stepped closer to the table. "Marcus has dated more than just you two, possibly more than one other woman." After a single statement, the audience went into chaos again, with people jumping out of their seats, calling names and making audacious predictions. Some urged the woman to keep the mystery intact, while others demanded her identity. Chantel gave Jackie her full attention. Jackie's tone was cool but harsh, and she cocked her head slightly. I had bits of information. I put them together, and I took my time until I was ready to share them. And since you two now know exactly what you're dealing with, you're welcome. You could have told me privately, you could have told her privately, but you waited until you had an audience because you like being in the middle of the chaos. Jackie smiled wider. The story's the main focus, not me. Marcus was to blame for this mess. I just exposed the truth. The audience was split in half of them cheering, Jackie and the other half cheering her, but everyone's eyes were still on the table. She took a deep, steady breath, knowing that the moment was still on the verge of something more, and she looked at Evelyn with a mix of resentment and hesitant recognition. "We're not done talking about this," she remarked flatly, and Evelyn nodded slowly once, her face inscrutable, before adding, "Not with each other. Not with him. No, we're not." As they gazed at one another for a few seconds, the air became heavy with questions about whether their next words would make them enemies or allies. Jackie's voice was lower now, but still audible across the table as she leaned back with her eyes sparkling. Sparkling. "You both think that you will be in charge of the story's future development, but you are not in charge of it, to record every little expression." For a long, nervous moment, it seemed as if even the air had stopped when the door behind Chantel clicked shut, causing a pause between Evelyn and Chantel. His eyes scanned the room, focusing on Evelyn, Chantel, and finally Jackie. Chantel's voice, which was sharp enough, broke the silence for a half-second before saying, "Look, who made the decision to appear? Good, as we have a lot to discuss." Marcus walked to the table without turning away. "Speak. There are charges against you." Important distinction. He spoke in a calm, measured tone, but his jaw was tense. "What we have heard is a fabrication. It's all just rumors." Marcus narrowed his gaze and stopped short of the table. Some people here, his eyes flicked to Jackie, are skilled at turning partial truths into a full-fledged circus. "Half-truths only hurt when the other half is just as bad," Jackie said, smiling instantly. The cameras captured Evelyn perfectly, with her arms folded and her chin up a little. With a tone of delight in her voice, Marcus put both hands flat on the table and closed the gap between them, saying, "And judging by the way you're standing there, you're not exactly clean in this. Do you think I ought to give this circus an explanation?" Chantel sat forward and stared at him closely. "No, but since my name has already been tarnished in front of a live audience, here is the whole situation for those of you who are unaware. I am enough knowledgeable. I understand. There are real witnesses who say, and I know that. You were with me in the afternoon and with her," she remarked, gesturing to Evelyn that same evening. The crowd instantly replied. The shuffle of people leaning closer, the gasps and shouts. As one of the guys in the front row muttered, "Damn." Marcus's eyes were fixed on Chantel. "Bought enough for a mic to catch it?" Evelyn added. "And do you believe them over me?" Before Chantel could reply, her voice cracked just enough to make others shift in their chairs. "Maybe we would have believed you if you'd told us before everyone else did." Marcus's jaw clenched. "I will say this. The truth is more complicated than you may think. You both mattered to me in different ways, and yes, I may have made mistakes. But I wasn't trying to hurt either of you." Those last words only served to fuel the fires. "So you have to admit it," shouted someone in the audience. Audience responses. The cry then started to half-yell, "Come on!" This is exactly what happens when you try to run the same game with two different people. And you've been waiting for this moment, waiting to throw fuel on the fire. Marcus turned his head towards her, his voice low but sharp. "Congratulations, Jackie. You've got your big scene." Jackie leaned back just enough to show she wasn't rattled. "My big scene isn't the problem." Chantel's voice sliced through like a blade. "The problem is that your different ways overlapped, and now you've got to face Chantel's question hit like a slap." And the crowd sat down, leaning forward and phones tilted up, trying to catch his reaction. Evelyn's posture immediately stiffened and her eyes narrowed. Marcus hesitated, and in that hesitation the damage was done. Chantel remained motionless, her face unreadable, waiting. Finally, Marcus whispered, "That's not a question I can answer here." Evelyn hesitated for a moment before catching herself. Alcohol erupted. Some people laughed, while others yelled, "Insults!" A woman at the front said, That means you can answer it to just don't want to. Evelyn got up slowly, her chair making a sound that was audible over the din of the crowd. Then you've already answered it, she said flatly, and she continued to walk around the table without looking at Marcus again, passing him so close that her shoulder touched his arm. The crowd sensed that the game was far from over. HNL single quotes as eyes follow her, then snapped back to Marcus. You don't get to dodge this forever. Not with me, not with her. Not with anyone who's seen this. Who stayed? She asked, placing his hands on the table. Not even close. The restless energy didn't go away. Instead, it grew. People whispered. Theories were speculative. Jackie leaned forward, her voice low but carrying. His eyes dropped to the surface as if the right words might be carved there. The next move, wondering if Marcus would try to win one of them back or lose them both. No one was willing to believe that this was the last time something explosive would happen between these three. Jackie sat back, a small smile curling at her lips, watching Marcus silently calculating. Chantel didn't break her gaze, and for a moment, it seemed like the entire room was holding its breath, waiting to see which way he would turn. The crowd moaned and yelled at the same time, so he moved to the edge of the table, straightened his jacket, and started towards the door, stopping just before he reached it, turning halfway back, and looking at Chantel's for a long-loaded second before moving to Evelyn, who was standing by the side of the stage, watching from a distance occasionally. Marcus then left, shaking his head slightly as he did so, and the door closed behind him, making the same slow, heavy sound it had made when it opened, but the room didn't calm down. If anything, the tension rose as everyone there realized that his departure wasn't the end, but rather the pause before something even bigger broke. The fallout was immediate, with clips of Marcus's hesitation appearing all over the place within minutes. Fans slowed down and scrutinized every frame, arguing whether his silence was due to strategy, fear, or guilt. Some said they saw regret in his eyes as he turned back to Chantel, while others said he was looking at Evelyn as if he was afraid of losing her completely. And with that, we leave you the internet. After Marcus left, the studio's noise level doubled, as evidenced by the way people moved and the way conversations overlapped so quickly that they became a single chaotic hum. Chantel stayed at the table, her jaw set tight, her arms folded, her eyes fixed on the floor as if she were replaying every second in her mind. You've seen the moments, heard the words, and heard the reactions in real time. Please share your thoughts in the comments section because every detail matters in a case like this. If you want to be the first to know the next twist before it blows up, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and enable your alerts. I promise you won't want to miss what happens. With more questions than answers, will Marcus come forward to clear his name, or has he already decided on his next move in silence? Bonus.